From Tally to Cali,
It's time
to wake up.
Wake up!
Warchant.com is your ultimate Seminole sports source.
and this is Wake Up Warchant, presented by
Vitamin energy.
The vitamins.
The energy.
Now here's Warchant.com's Aslan Hajavandi.
and Corey Clark.
Wake up! It's Wake Up Warchant presented by Vitamin Energy. Coming up on today's show, we want Bama? Question mark? Exclamation point. The Tide looks sluggish in their bowl game. We talk about next year's season opener, the transfer portal, the very latest on it from our own Michael Langston. And hey, it turns out maybe some of these teams not in the SEC can play some really good ball after all. Wake Up Warchant presented by Vitamin Energy, vitaminenergy.com. Brand new year. Get your resolutions done. And you're going to need energy to get it done, everybody. 260 milligrams, all natural caffeine, so the absorption is just right. Steady throughout the entire day, gives you the 7 hours of energy. Improve your focus, improve your immune response, improve your mood. VitaminEnergy.com. Rocking it out in 2025. WordChant.com, ultimate Seminole sports source. Come over, join PRB, Premium Recruiting Board. Lots and lots of important people on campus visiting. Michael Langston, as you heard in the open, will be joining us middle of the show to give us the latest on what's been going down with recruiting. But there's been so much football being played here, Corey. It feels like we should probably talk about that. But let me welcome you in. How's 2025 been for you so far, my friend? It's been crazy for the country, for the world, it seems.
Yeah, but had a good New Year. Obviously, that was heartbreaking in the videos in New Orleans, and that's a place I've been to a lot. I really enjoy that city. That was tough to see. I think that was tough for the country to see, especially because so many young people and just people in general were having a good time in the middle of Bourbon Street, and then that craziness, evil happens. But, yeah, we got to watch a lot of football, man. Yeah. And, that's where we are. So how was your New Year's?
Eventful.
Oh, great.
Fun. It was fun, though, on the whole, though. First time at a New Year's kiss in a long time, but let's not get into that. Let's talk about football.
Was it really? When was the last time you had one? If you were to put a number on it, how long ago?
Last time I had a girlfriend, like 2019, like going into 2019.
Before COVID, pre-COVID.
Yeah,
okay,
so,
all right, nice.
Life's changed so much.
Yeah. Hey, before we get into the football,
okay,
I would be remiss if I didn't mention Tanaya Latson. No, Tanaya Latson.
Dude, what? 40 what did she hang?
She had 40 points. That ties the school record. She had 40 points on Thursday night in what was the final there? 105-74 win over Virginia Tech on the road. She's the leading scorer in the country, and she put up 40, and she was the first D1 player in 5 years to have 40 points, 5 assists, and 5 steals in the same game. Again, just an all-time sensational superstar, one of the best athletes in Florida State history. It's really cool that she's still here, and it's really cool that she's so good. So just want to give her a quick shout-out before we got onto the football.
Okay, so before we get to all the playoff games, might need to take some time to apologize. Do you still not want to schedule Alabama after seeing how bad they looked against Michigan and the fact that they're not going to have Jalen Milroe?
No, look, I've come around to it. Let Alabama come here. That's awesome. That's fine. It's great for the city. It'll be an exciting game. You know Alabama's going to travel well, so that's good for the city. Florida State fans will come up because it's such a big game. Alabama's never played at Doak. That's all awesome. Just make somebody else the Week 0 game. You can do it.
Ira went over this, so there's only a certain amount of schools that can actually play the Week 0.
I bet you Texas A&M Commerce can. If you say, look, guys, we'll throw you an extra $100K. Instead of playing you September 11th or 12th or 14th, we'll play you August 20th, August 23rd, whatever it is. That's what because I really don't think the Duquesne game was always going to be a Week 0 game. I think that offseason, after they lost their 5th effing season opener in a row, they're like, you know what? Let's quit starting 0-1. Let's not open with LSU in New Orleans. Let's have a warm-up game before that. And then look what happened. They won whatever they won, 23 of their next 26 games. So that's what I would do. Either Kent State or A&M Commerce, convince them to come play August 23rd, whatever it takes. But no, Alabama does not scare you. I say that now having no idea what they're going to do at quarterback. I assume somebody will be in the portal that's pretty good that they'll go get. What is their quarterback situation?
Ty Simpson, I think.
I assume he was a 5-star, super-duper recruit.
I shouldn't have said that out loud without triple checking or whatever. But yeah, he's still there. He was. Let's see what we had him on 3 back in the day when he was he's from Martin, Tennessee. In case people are wondering, Ty Simpson, dual threat.
Yeah,
he was a 5-star, number 25 overall prospect in the 2022 class, number 2 quarterback.
Yeah, so I assume he was obviously very highly recruited. Maybe he's awesome. Who knows? If they don't think he's very good, they'll go get somebody out of the portal probably. But yeah, I do like unless they go and I don't even know who they'd get that would be like, oh no, not him. But I do think that I like the fact that they'll be opening with a brand new quarterback. That'll be whether Florida State gets a week 0 game or not. Alabama won't. So that will be their first game. That will be his first game. It'll be on the road against what we think and hope will be an improved Florida State team in a really tough environment. So good for the Noles. And yes, Alabama looked ridiculously bad again.
That Gronowski kid scares me from San Diego State. I know it's a P5 or not P5. It's an FCS program, but that kid is gives me a little scary if he were to be a quarterback. But hey. Week 1, Alabama, you would be breaking things and being a little bit rusty. Continue the theme about apologizing. Got to admit, Corey, I thought Alabama was probably a better team than Indiana. I don't know if we can get into deserving. If we get deserving Indiana, sure. You played 12 games, you won 11 of them, several of them convincingly. The one good team you played, you lost to.
Right.
But that's deserving because you went 11 for 12. But I still thought, I'm like, you know what? The trenches, right? Up front in the trenches. Texas, too much for Arizona State. Alabama would be too much for Indiana. It would be too much for Boise State. Nick Saban says it. I believe it. I'm a sucker for a smart person telling me something and me believing it hook, line, and sinker. But watching the playoff games, I didn't get to watch the Boise State-Penn State game at all. But watching the Arizona State-Texas game, and by the way, holy smokes, Kenny Dillingham.
Yeah.
Right? What he did for Jordan Travis and Bo Nix, and I know it wasn't as much of a reclamation, revitalization of what he did for Cam Skattebo, but apparently, he really challenged Skattebo this offseason. And listen, if you want to be a Sunday kind of back, this is what you have to be, X, Y, and Z. And that kid and what they did in the second half of that game, really the fourth quarter and into overtime, was nothing short of incredible. Mm-hmm. And I remember when those first 2 series or whatever, that game, when Texas scores on like 2 plays on their first drive and then a punt return, you're like, here we go, man. Like this is why these teams don't belong playing with these other powers, from historical, culturally relevant college football teams. And then you see the way that Arizona State fought back. You saw the way that Notre Dame out-physicaled almost Georgia.
Yeah, 100% they did, yeah.
And it's like, all right, man, like we might need a little self-reflection. People of my ilk, the Kirk Herbstreits of the world, these people. So we need to go back to deserving, I guess, because 12 best is way too difficult to say with all these different schedules being played and everything else that's going on in college football right now. We have to make it the 12 most deserving teams. And, yeah, like a 3-loss team, the fact that was even brought up really is an absolute shame. And then the fact that it was talked about so much during some of those opening round games is even more kind of gross.
I just think people haven't come to grips yet with the parity in the sport. You see that Texas gets all these 5 stars. You see that they have a backup that is probably the most famous backup quarterback in college football history. They have a quarterback that might get $6 million next year to go play for someone else, and he's not even close to their best player, our most draftable player. I mean, Texas might have, on the whole, 20 guys that get drafted on that team, 25, I don't know, and some of them first round. They have some unbelievable talent, and it's like, okay, yeah, but that doesn't mean they're an incredible football team, that they're unbeatable. And it's like, look at Arizona State, look at the star rankings on that team compared to the Texas team.
And the size core, like we kept hearing about how much bigger Texas is up front.
And then you look at those stats after the game. Yeah. And you're like, oh, that's interesting. Arizona State put 500 yards of offense on that team. They also, I thought, for the most part, out-physicaled Texas. And if they get, look, Texas, credit to them, man. Those were some money throws that Ewers made in the fourth quarter of that game. That's obviously a big-time throw on fourth and or not great defense. It wasn't a big-time throw, but at least he saw it. He didn't panic. But in credit to Texas for winning the game. They deserve to win. It should have been targeting, but whatever.
But they didn't have a reliable kicker. But I don't know how
right.
that is not targeting. I don't know how that is
makes
not
no
that
sense.
It
makes no sense. I'm glad that it at least went to overtime because I thought Texas was going to win on the last play of the game, and that they would have never gotten that chance if that targeting was called. They never would have gotten the ball back. Right. But even still, the point being, Arizona State on paper with star rankings that shouldn't be a competitive game. People haven't quite grasped that. Yes, you might have more NFL players, but the difference between a second round pick and a no round pick that's still a good college football player, man. Look at the numbers, man. Just look at these games. It's not that big a disparity. Texas is on paper, they will have probably 20 guys drafted off this team in the next 2 years. Arizona State might have 5. Well, did it look like that in the game? Those were evenly matched teams. If you have a team that plays hard, that's coached well, that has talent, even if it's not incredible first-round NFL talent, you will give teams competitive games. And, again, Georgia has some real talent. They lost 3 times this year and really should have lost to Georgia Tech. That's 4 games they should have lost with all that talent, with all those guys getting drafted. And too much stock is put into where guys are projected to go or how many stars were by their name when they got recruited and not by the actual performance of the team. And so that's why the whole thing has bothered me. And I'm really hopeful that this first playoff will illuminate that for the people that matter. I doubt it will, but I think it will illuminate that fact. I do like that the country is starting to turn on ESPN and is starting to turn on the overhyped SEC because this is proof. Look, they got 3 teams in. Everybody thought Alabama should be in too. Well, look, man, Alabama, they lost to Michigan. They get 1 touchdown?
That's terrible. I mean,
and not only that, the Michigan team that was sitting their 4 best defensive players. So don't sit here and tell us how unbelievably talented this team is, and they would have rolled Notre Dame, or it would have been a much better game than what Indiana. Come on, man. You don't know that. They're hypotheticals. And that's the point that's been made on Twitter a lot in these last couple of weeks is the SEC is always undefeated in hypotheticals. They're always they'd crush Indiana. Yeah. Oh, they'd be favored by 12 points against Indiana. Or 16 points. Indiana wouldn't have a chance against Georgia. Indiana wouldn't have a chance against the team. Or SMU and blah, blah, blah. Arizona State can't compete with Texas. Man, Arizona State was a 4th and 13 away from winning that game. And they were without their best receiver.
Yep.
And they were without one of their best defenders for the first half because he was sitting out for a targeting call.
And he made an impact when he came back in the game.
Right. But so I just hope people understand there is not that much difference between the haves and the have-nots. The haves and have never done anything. The parity has never been closer. And that's what gives me hope about Florida State, that you can see how close these teams are. I don't think it's too much to ask that Florida State can be as good as 2024 Arizona State. That's not asking too much. They're spending a lot of money. They got good coaches. It's possible, but let's look at what the SEC did in the playoffs. They got housed by Ohio State. Tennessee lost to Ohio State worse than Indiana did.
Yes.
Georgia lost to Notre Dame worse than Indiana did. On a neutral site, by the way, they didn't have to go to South Bend. I know they had a backup quarterback. They still lost worse than Indiana did. Indiana scored more points than Georgia did. So I just think, and I thought Georgia got some really nice calls there in the fourth quarter. And they still lost. It still wasn't all that competitive. They scored 10 points. I shouldn't say it wasn't competitive. It was a fine game. It was a close game. Whatever. It was close enough that we watched. But I just think that you're looking that Texas barely beat Arizona State in double overtime, and the other 2 SEC teams lost. And the team that everybody thought should have been in, they lost to a Michigan team that can't complete a forward pass and had their 4 best defensive players sitting out. And
they lost
other
a quarterback.
team,
they lost a quarterback to Michigan.
Right, and then South Carolina, they lost to Illinois.
Yeah.
So shut up. Just shut up. You are the best conference. I think by and large over the last 10 or 15 years it has been proven that the SEC is the best conference. But it is not so astronomically better than every other conference or teams from these other conferences that it's a joke that the 5th place SEC team doesn't get to play for the national championship. You didn't deserve it. Sorry. Would Indiana have gone 11-1 in the SEC? No, they wouldn't have. But they don't play in the SEC. And I just feel like Indiana was a deserving, as you said, was a deserving football team. And trying to figure out the best is just buffoonery. Yeah. Because what does that even mean? And who decides it? Because they don't quite get it right. Because the 4 teams that got the first-round byes all lost. So, and I know they had to be ranked that way to a certain extent, but and I know they'll probably go back and like reshuffle that. And I don't think the conference champions will get an automatic bye moving forward, which they shouldn't. But nobody thought Texas would have been challenged by Arizona State. And quite frankly, if Boise State doesn't grab a face mask on they had a touchdown pass, Aslan. I know you didn't watch the game. Yeah. They had a touchdown pass that would have made it 24-21 late in the third quarter that was called back because of illegal hands to the face by an offensive lineman. So if that doesn't happen, well, you got a game there too. Yeah. So again, just miss me with all this stuff. It's hard to win in college football, period. And if teams win 10 or 11 games, they should be rewarded, period. And the SEC is probably the best conference. Maybe not this year. I would say the Big Ten is this year. Like, there's a chance it's going to be a Big Ten national championship game. Indiana's in the Big Ten. They won 11 games in the Big Ten. You know what they did, Aslan? They beat Michigan.
Correct.
You know who didn't beat Michigan? Alabama. And Ohio State. So I love how they were just discredited. Like, does that win mean more now? Are we a little more impressed now with Indiana because they did beat a Michigan team that's last 2 wins were over Ohio State and Alabama? That seems like, looking in hindsight, it's a pretty good win for Indiana. But they didn't get any credit for it at the time. So that was a long rant. But I think this is set up perfectly for college football, this first 12-team playoff. As Stephanie said on Thursday when she heard on the radio that it was going to be Notre Dame and Penn State in the semifinals, she's like, wow, that sounds like a game I would have watched with my dad in the 80s.
Yeah, man. Yeah.
It's like, yeah, that's why this thing is so awesome. Yeah. You've got Texas, Ohio State on one side. Texas, I know, is in the SEC, but barely. They've just been in for a year. Yeah. And then you've got Penn State and Notre Dame. You've got all these teams that haven't won a ton. I mean, I know they're big-time programs, but Penn State hasn't won a national championship since 86. Notre Dame, 88. What was Texas, 05? 20 years ago? Yeah. So, yeah, I just think it's good for the sport. Arizona State was a hair away from being in the semifinals.
I know, man. That's
really cool for the sport, and I hope that is celebrated and encouraged instead of next year we're in the same spot and we're like, man, I don't know, does this 9-3 South Carolina team, should they be in over 11-1 Oregon? Like, I just hope, or 11-1 Florida State, I just hope those conversations die and that we move forward. It needs to be deserving and not best. No. But who decides who's more deserving? Who knows?
Weirder thing, the fact that no conference champion is still alive, or the fact that every team that had a first-round bye lost?
Well, they're one and the same, right? But I know what you're asking. It's
well, Clemson won the ACC, but yeah.
Oh, yeah, you're right. I would say probably the bye, I think. Well, no, I would say conference champion. I would have thought, but it's like Georgia. That's another thing. I mean, look, and everybody knows I went to Georgia. I promise I wasn't rooting for them. I didn't care about that game one iota on Thursday. But it's like, Penn State lost their championship game. Mm. And, again, I know I just went on saying that all these teams, there's parity and all that, and that's true. But why would Penn State get SMU and then Boise State, and Georgia gets Notre Dame, or Oregon, who won, gets Ohio State?
A team they already beat.
Yes, yeah. They've got to figure that out. I do think they need to reseed it. I'm perfectly fine with that.
Don't they do something in baseball to where, like, if you're a wild card team, you won't play the team that won the division or whatever?
In the first round, they try to avoid those. Yeah. But the NFL's dumb too. Like Detroit and Minnesota play this weekend. Whoever wins the game is the number 1 overall seed and gets the bye. Whoever loses the game is the number 5 seed, is on the road against Tampa Bay. Mm. That's stupid too. So, all these things. So, but I do think they'll figure it out. I hope they'll figure it out. I really do think they'll figure it out. And I just look, man, I think it's really cool that it's Notre Dame and Penn State and Texas and Ohio. Maybe not Ohio State. We could deal with some new blood besides them. But I think it's good for the sport that all these other teams are in contention, including somebody like Ole Miss and South Carolina. Like, they've never had a chance to get into a game that mattered in our lifetimes. And they were probably one win away, both of them, for being in the playoffs. So I think it keeps more fan bases interested. I also think this year has proven, don't believe the hype. Maybe ESPN and Kirk will pump the brakes on what teams deserve to be in, even with 2 or 3 or 4 losses. It will actually start encouraging or celebrating the SMUs and Indianas and Arizona States of the world.
Kenny Dillingham was in Tallahassee for 2 years, but I guess that's like longer than however long Bill Parcells was in Tallahassee and Don James.
Right. Yeah.
So I know a lot of people have a really soft spot for Kenny. I remember after one of the games, I was asking one of the reporters, Jordan, I'm like, who are you going to root for if Arizona State plays Colorado in the Big 12 championship game? And he's like, why would I root against Kenny? And I'm like, well, that's just a really good answer. That Sam Levitt kid reminded me so much of like Jordan.
Yeah.
And like what Kenny's done there, again, like the way that he coached up Jordan, the way that he coached up Bo Nix, what he's done to Cam Scadaboo, I just wonder like how much like we talked about what Mike brought when he had this job, when he got his first Power 5 job at this iconic brand of an institution like Florida State. And it might have been coordinators that didn't exactly have cachet that fell in line with that. And I was looking at what Kenny brought in. His defensive coordinator, never heard of Brian Ward, but Brian Ward was actually at Washington State the last few years, and Washington State was always a really pesky out there in the Pac-12 for a lot of teams. And then his offensive coordinator got a lot of face time during the game was Marcus Arroyo. Marcus Arroyo was a really bright, shining star. I think he was with the Bucks, maybe either quarterback coach or OC. I think that might have been the year Jeff Jagosinski abruptly resigned before the season started. They made Arroyo the OC, and then he was the head coach at UNLV. But, Kenny, I'm like, Kenny's like, I can't imagine him not calling plays, but he doesn't call plays. Like, he is very much a delegator, emotional guru for that program and that team. And like all the interviews he did either right before kickoff or, between quarters, like he was so calm and just so like in control of everything. It was wild. He's so young. I can't wrap my head around all this. I'm wondering like how much of what we hope to see this coming season from Florida State is going to be maybe some of what Arizona State became, where you've got a head coach who has all this bandwidth to tap back into his whole like ethos about building brotherhood, instilling culture, because he's going to have 2 coordinators that have a resume that's worthy of their title at the institution they're now at.
Yeah, I mean, it's a lot to unpack there. I think that I will say this. I don't think that Kenny has some magical formula that Mike Norvell doesn't have or isn't privy to. I think that he got a team.
Connected, though, man. He connected to this team in the way that the Mike connected to the team last year.
He did, but again, the challenge at a place like Arizona, well, really at a place like almost everywhere now, literally almost everywhere, is year to year the teams change so much. Jimbo said that forever, that one team has a lifespan of 364 days. We all know that. It's one lifespan. But, then you have it used to be you might have 20 new guys or 23 new guys. Well, now you have 50 new guys. So it really is the lifespan is one single season. And it is always going to be difficult to know what the personality of that team the next year is. You'd always like to have some holdovers, guys that played well, that you're younger, that come back. But most of these teams are going to have the challenge of, especially like in Indiana or in Arizona State or in SMU, trying to replicate it. Now, that does not excuse what happened with Mike Norvell in 2024. We weren't looking for another 13-0. We were looking for something that was at least competent. I don't think any of these teams are going to fall off a cliff like Florida State did. But there is a challenge when you have a season like this to repeat it, especially. Those Scadaboos don't come around that often. Yeah. That you aren't replicating that, just like Florida State clearly couldn't replicate Jordan Travis. That's a record for the use of replicate in a 60-second span, by the way.
Football podcast.
Yeah, so that's the challenge when you have special players like that, is the DNA's great. You love the culture. All that is true. But you also need some special. And what's Arizona State's record without Scadaboo? 3 wins less? 5 wins? Like, I literally don't know. I don't know what the answer is to that.
Well, so they were 3-9 last year, and to your point, they brought in 29 transfers this past season. They were ranked 66th in the transfer portal rankings.
So 29 transfers, and then also probably another 20 to 25 freshmen. So, again, You're talking over 50 new players. Some of those guys are going to leave. He's probably going to leave it, bring in 35 to 40 new players again this year, and none of them are named Scadaboo. But what he does have is the truth at quarterback. I don't know if that guy's going to be an NFL quarterback. I don't know if he's a Heisman contender. That is a tough SOB that's really competitive and good, and he's got him for at least another year or two. So that helps everything when you're not having to go get yourself another quarterback. But, yeah, I do think that Dillingham has surprised me. I'm not going to sit here and say I saw this coming, that he was literally a 4th and 13 or a targeting call away from being in the semifinals of the national championship playoffs. I didn't think that was something he'd be doing in year 2. So all credit to him. It's been awesome. Now the challenge is we just went through here, sustaining it. And we'll see. I don't know that Arizona State is all of a sudden the next,
Will they fill the vacuum
Tennessee.
that Southern Cal has not been able to reassert in the West Coast, or is it just all
Yeah,
Oregon
maybe.
now,
I will say this. I hope he's able to – and look, I would never root against Kelly Dillingham. He was good to me. He was good to us. Yeah. He was fun to talk to. I hope he does do that. I hope he builds a power out there.
The bamboo, baby, the bamboo.
And you got to imagine the players around the country, certainly that area of the country, have to be really enamored. Yeah, enamored and enticed with him. He's a young guy. He's fun. He's intense. I would think that'd be something that people would want to go play for. And I think he's got a good collective, too, a collective that's really working for him, too.
And he's been getting so much positive media. He came out and talked about, listen, I told all my guys, enter the portal, do what you have to do. If you want to still ride with us, you're more than welcome to go through bowl prep and everything with us. And everybody's this is the way you're supposed to handle it. I mean, for being as young as he is and not been in all the battles and all the kind of scar tissue built up that, a guy like Gus has, it's really been it's incredible. Yeah. But I can't imagine. It's amazing. It really is what he's done in such a short time there. But we'll see if it is sustainable after all. What I know about is sustainable is Corner Pocket Bar and Grill being the go-to any day of the week. Lunch specials, though, daily from 11 a.m. to 3 p.m. on weekdays. And then, next week we'll be back in the groove, everybody. Trivia night, Tuesday.
Yep.
Bingo night, Thursday. Oh. So come on out, watch some playoff games, throw some darts, shoot some pool, drink some cold beverages, have a Corey wrap. Maybe see Corey at the CP.
That's probably going to happen. That's probably a likelihood if you're at Corner Pocket this next week coming up. And then also – they have the Notre Dame Penn State game is on Thursday, and the Texas Ohio State game is on Friday. So those will both be on the big screen as well. So that's good. Good times to the Corner Pocket. All the sports you can watch. Cold beer, hot women. You know the deal.
Come check it out. Corner Pocket Bar and Grill, 2475 Appalachia Parkway. Micah Langston giving us the latest on the transfer portal and Florida State's pursuit of important pieces right after this. All right, we got the man here that knows everything when it comes to recruiting, Michael Langston, recruiting analyst for warchant.com. Michael, thanks for doing this after your very long, very robust, very involved live chat with Mr. Tom Lang earlier on Thursday evening, man. Good to be here.
Yeah, I'm glad to be here. Rasul Faison was – shout out to that dude, man. That dude interviewed with me at 7 o'clock at night, and you just don't usually see that. So Utah State running back. So really good interview, guys. Go to Warchant. Something to be on the front page. Really good story. You'll like it a lot.
All right. Well, what can you give us without giving away the cow or the milk or whatever when it comes to Faison? Okay. Obviously, a very productive guy from Utah State. Sounds like there's some other visits happening. Is that accurate, or do you think Tallahassee was enough for him to see?
I think that's a maybe for me on that answer, because he told me I asked him directly because he said, yeah, I got Alabama schedule and I got North Carolina schedule and I got Utah schedule. I was like, so I followed up and said, are you going to take those visits? And he's like, I don't know yet. No, I have to talk to my family. So he's at least contemplating that being the only one. Now, do I think he takes a visit? Probably. But he was at least, it was a lot different than what we'd heard that, he's for sure taking these other visits before the FSU visit. So I think in general, that's certainly a positive of what FSU did. I don't want to give away everything in the story, but I will say FSU did a really good job. I think they nailed it on this visit, and people can read about it later, but I think very strong move by FSU on this visit.
Yeah, I'm just looking at the list of guys that they already have gotten from the portal. And, most of those guys, like when they show up, they don't leave campus without, having committed. Like Stephon Thompson, James Williams, Gunnar Hansen, McCray, Medley, Deuce. Like Deuce was, Louisville trying to get Deuce to show up to the Louisville, obviously, and he did not. Yeah. So whenever they leave here without committing, you always get a little bit concerned, but it sounds like there's reason for optimism with Faison. Again, running back, they're okay there, but they want to go after somebody who's a little bit productive, so we'll trust them at that. Let's go to defense then, Michael, because right now defensive line seems to be like the glaring number one need for this team. What do we know about Diamante Diggs out of Coastal Carolina in terms of how much they're prioritizing him and how they envision his usage in this defense if he were to commit?
Yeah, that one feels like that's one they can get. That I feel like if they push and they keep pushing the way they are pushing that I see, off this visit, I think that's one that could end up here. I think he really likes the staff, Norvell. He's in his first day of the visit when I was there. Had a little funny moment when Mike, he's over the roof shouting at DeMonte, like, what's up? And so there's a good connection, I think, developed on that visit. And certainly his size is he fits the mold of exactly what you would think. And then I just think he's a guy that, they want guys that are going to create problems with the pass rush. And I think he does that. So I think that's a guy certainly that is very much in the picture. Really just depends on the push. I think if they keep pushing and they push for a commit, I think that's one that FSU can get done.
6'5", 260, had been at Youngstown State, native of Pennsylvania, now has been at Coastal the last few years. So obviously defensive end, a position of need. For some reason I can't pull him up on PFF. I don't know what that's all about. I'm spelling it.
Yeah, I don't know. I think he had 5 sacks last year or something.
Maybe I wasn't spelling it correctly. So what do we have here with PFF? He graded out at 62.5 at 18 pressures on 219 pass rush snaps. So feels like a project, but they need help there. It feels more like a depth piece. I wouldn't say project, but I think depth piece that, with the pressures that tells you he creates problems and creates, he's maybe not a finish guy where he's not like a can't miss guy that's a pass rush machine, just gets sacks like James Williams does. But I think overall he creates a lot of problems, and I think he would be a really good depth piece from what I see. All right, then. How about Chris Murray, Sam Houston State, 6'4", 255, graded out at 78.1. He's played more football year by year in 3 years as a Bearcat at Sam Houston. He's graded out better progressively year over year. He's moved up his pressure numbers. So, again, graded out 78 this past season, 34 pressures on 260 pass rush snaps. Not too shabby. How important is Chris Murray to Florida State's effort and desires right now, Michael?
Yeah, I think very important. I put him up there with James Williams of how they wanted him and they coveted him. I think they covet Chris very highly. There's a lot of schools that are, certainly getting in there that want to get him on campus. I think Auburn's one of them. There's a few more that I'm probably forgetting, but
Virginia and West Virginia. Yeah. You feel good about it. If you're competing against West Virginia and Auburn, you feel pretty good, I feel.
Yeah, and he's got a connection because he knows Chris Thompson pretty well. I think he's originally from Texas. Or his family is, or there's connection
you're
there.
Right. You're right. He is.
So I think there's a good personal connection, and everything seemed to be going really good on the first day. Massive greeting, much like what we saw with Deuce Robinson when he came there for the opening of the visit. So I think overall that's one that they're coveting, and certainly would be the top guy, that edge guy that I think that is uncommitted that they want in this class. I think you pair him up with a guy like James Williams. That's along with Deontay McCray. That's one heck of a additions for your edge position. And I think you really start to feel good that, hey, this position could be really good for FSU if these guys fill out the way we think they are.
This news obviously changes minute to minute, hour to hour. You need to check out warchant.com's premium recruiting board for the latest and the greatest and the most up-to-date information. But Jason Jenkins, the defensive lineman out of Tennessee, seems like he was one of the more buzzier names that was in the portal, and things were it seemed like there was going to be a visit set up that might not have came through. It sounds like North Carolina, Texas Tech might be players for him as well. Where do you think things stand right now between Jenkins and Florida State, and maybe how real is the interest between both sides?
Yeah, I was told late in the day that the visit wasn't happening, that he didn't visiting FSU. So now is that one that maybe they'll bring in Sunday? Maybe. Maybe something they can squeeze in a visit on Sunday. But as of now, I was told that the visit wasn't on, that they were going to do it. Whether that's, because if you look at the stats and stuff, it's similar to DeMonte. So I don't know if they saw something better, the value was there, or just they felt like both of them have potential, but maybe this is one that's, personally invested. I don't know. I don't know the exact reasons. I just know, the visit wasn't there and it didn't happen and probably ends up somewhere else, but we'll see. I'm not going to say he for sure will because these kids change their visits so fluidly. Squirrel White wasn't even in the picture that was going to visit, and then in a matter of 8 hours, he's right in front of me on campus. So these things do change and they're very fluid with the visits. But as of now, I would say probably not on Jason.
All right. Want to ask you about Marquez Watson-Trent, the linebacker out of Georgia Southern. I think as we sit here and talk, he's out in Lincoln, Nebraska. Again, you never like it. He was on campus, which is obviously the biggest thing is to get these guys on campus. And once they leave campus without committing, usually you kind of feel like maybe you're slipping a little bit. What do you think he took away from that visit? I think RPMs are kind of leaning towards Nebraska, but I don't know really how accurate those are. What is your sense right now about the recruitment right now of that linebacker out of Georgia Southern, Marquez Watson-Trent? Highly productive dude.
Yeah, it was a conversation, a good one we had with Tom earlier. Just I think they like him. There's mutual interests, but I don't know if the value is there from FSU of yes, he's extremely productive from the the G5 level, but is he going to be that productive if FSU adds him? Are you going to do the same productivity? So I think that's kind of where we're at of how valued that he will be by FSU. And so that's kind of, I think he had a good time on a visit. I think everything, clicked. Obviously, to your point, when they don't commit or we don't hear start indications, then, maybe that one's just not happening. But overall, it really just feels like if the value isn't there from an NIL perspective, from FSU, he'll probably end up at Nebraska or somewhere else. But that's kind of where I'm at on that recruit and waiting to see if there's a value push from FSU.
All right, I'm glad you kind of clarified that, because I don't know, when we talk about value, are we wondering in terms of spots we have available, guys we anticipate being there, needing there, or how much of it is price tags and what guys want and how much they've got, resource-wise.
Yeah, because you got to go by what you have on your roster and what you're valuing on your roster at that position. Certainly, they think a lot of Blake. That's a guy that they value very highly. So compare that to where you feel like with him, that's kind of the thing. So every guy, it's come down to value, and in the end, it's going to have to do with something to do with NIL. That's just the reality. So really, I think it comes down to that when I look at Marquise, because I think he likes. There's a connection certainly with FSU. I think he loves what Tony White's going to do, but I never got the sense of the warm and fuzzies on the visit where it's like, hey, they're really, really pushing hard here.
Okay, that's fair. I guess that's all we can ask. If they are pushing hard, then you don't get them. Then you can get disappointed. But if they're not making the full court press, then there's really
it just didn't feel like that yet.
All right, so just kind of big picture then, Michael. How do you think they're attacking the portal right now in terms of you mentioned a guy like Diamante Diggs from Coastal Carolina, the defensive end we talked about, where that's probably a take if they want it, but maybe they're not pushing too hard for it. Is it still slow playing things because these playoff teams are getting eliminated? There's other bowl games coming up, and these guys are going to probably more talent's going to jump into the portal. Do you think that's affecting the way they're addressing or approaching players in the portal, or does this seem to you kind of like a lot of urgency and they're pretty much getting all their priorities that they need?
I think there's urgency for certain guys. Like there was an urgency for Deuce Robinson. There was an urgency for James Williams. There was an urgency for even Stephon Thompson. who they liked a lot. Even there's other guys, but there's certain guys that they understand, to your point. Yeah, we got to be careful. I would say they've been very calculated of guys they push for, and that's the best word I can use to explain the portal. Because in the December window, they were like, they waited and they were getting the last visit, and then they saw that kind of a few of those hurt them, like with Jack Pyburn and a few other guys. And so we saw in the January window it was a little bit different because FSU was getting all the first visits. So I think they learned some of that, and it's like, you know what, we covet these guys, we got to go after them first, because it's basically like you got to get them on campus no matter what. And I think they kind of realized that maybe there was a few that they could have maybe pulled out, and got at the end if they would have got them on campus first. So I think the main thing is they were much more aggressive towards the end of the December cycle, and then certainly in the January cycle. So I think overall the best way I can explain the way they do the portal is they're very calculated of the guys they want. Like you saw that with the offensive line. 4 experienced starting guys really went after the guys they wanted, nailed them. They didn't hit on everybody, but they got on most of them, and they got some really productive, experienced offensive linemen. And then, same thing with, just different coveted positions. We see the ones that they just really push hard, that they put urgency on. So I think it's matter to the prospect how urgent they are with certain guys.
Okay, so I think right now on 3 has the Noles with, gosh, I had it on the list, and then it jumps off there. 11 guys that they've brought in.
Mm-hmm.
What do you think that number kind of ends at, Michael? And is January 6th? I mean, that's the first day of classes, everybody.
Yeah.
Is that kind of like the last? I mean, will they be taking guys after that could like enroll later? Where's the calendar looking like? And what do you think the numbers end up being, and how much more runway is there to maybe achieve that number if you think of one?
Yeah, I think that number for the date for the final one could extend all the way to like January 7th.
Okay.
But I think most of their visits will be done on the 5th or 6th, because we see they're hosting a couple receivers. Squirrel White is on campus. Traylon Ray from West Virginia, a productive receiver, although he had an injury. They're on the later part of the weekend, and then now you have some of these edge guys that are coming in. So I think overall their visit stuff will be done, and I think by the time this January cycle is done, I'd say around 14, 15, something like that, maybe around that number.
All right, so we were smoking stuff, thinking that they were going to get like 30 or 40 guys.
Yeah, anybody that said that is crazy.
Okay.
Because I didn't say 30 or 40.
No, I know you weren't saying. Yeah.
I thought they were going to be in the 20s.
Okay.
I thought it was possible we'd get to the 20s, but we overstated how many they would take. I think we kind of got a little excited because, I mean, you're looking at this roster, you're like, man, they need a lot of help. Got to add a bunch of dudes, man. And so you're thinking like they're going to take more than they actually were. So I think it's going to be more closer to that 17, 18 mark than it will be exactly 20. So now that's with everything. That's counting the spring. That's counting January that we're finishing up.
Really?
Yeah.
Are they going to have 105 guys? Well, I mean, I guess they'll always have 105. They can find.
Yeah, I think it's get to 17, 18 at the most. I don't see it going beyond that, but I think 17 is certainly one that's attainable, and then 14 or 15 for this after this January cycle. I could see them being at that number because I think they're around 11 or 12 right now.
They brought in 11 people. On 3 has them as of having 21 transferred out, but they also have several walk-ons on that list. So I don't have scholarship guys in front of me. But
I'm just talking about guys they've actually signed from the portal.
Yeah, 11. So they got 11 guys that they've signed.
11.
Pettibon, Pettis, Deuce, Randy Pittman, Adrian Medley, Deontay McCrae, Gunnar Hansen, James Williams, Stephon Thompson, Biscuit, and Thomas Castellano.
Yeah, so I think you could get to like the 12 to 14 type for when January's finished. Okay. And then the spring maybe add, a few more to that. So that's why I think overall my impressions of this whole portal is they did a lot better than I thought they would. Like, I did not expect them to be so effective on the offensive line.
Yeah, no, Yeah, it might not be quantity, but in terms of quality guys that got on the offensive line, it's hard to imagine like Pettibon not starting against Alabama. It's hard to imagine Micah Pettis is not your starting left tackle. It's hard to imagine Gunnar Hansen probably isn't your right tackle, and Medley's probably in the mix somewhere on the interior. So, that's what you needed to remedy. You got your quarterback. You have a receiver. We'll see what works out with Rasul Faison.
Yeah.
You obviously have tight ends. So, the defense, though, it just seems like, we like Stephon Thompson. James Williams has got a lot of upside. But, in terms of, like, edge setters, more disruptive guys off the edge, that's kind of – I would think that's probably the biggest need, right, again, just to kind of circle back to where we started this thing off on right now.
I agree.
Okay.
You would like to see you would like to see Chris Murray. I mean, that's what you'd like to see. Like if they get Chris Murray, my view is is the pendulum starts to go up if you get a guy like Murray, because I think that's a productive guy. That's what you're kind of looking for. If they get that, I think they start to trend towards kind of what you want to see out of that edge position.
What are you going to do the rest of the day? You going to go hang out at Moore all day Friday?
I'm going to be there first thing in the morning, and then Matt is back in town.
That's right.
So he will take over, and I am chilling at home and handling things from the home front of whatever news we're doing. So that's kind of my plan. I think it's been like 9 straight days. So I think I'll handle stuff from the home front.
Sounds good. The grind don't stop. Michael Langston joining us here on Wake Up Warchant. Michael, appreciate you, man. We'll talk soon.
You got it.
We're coming back. It's Wake Up Warchant. It's presented by Vitamin Energy. VitaminEnergy.com. Sip the juice. 260 milligrams all natural caffeine, everybody. Get you some. Corey, I feel bad for that poor young man. I don't know if he's still on the Georgia football team, but why do they have to go back and point it out again as the game was winding down, as though this I don't know his name. If you know his name, I ask for you to not say his name because I don't think he needs to endure any more ridicule than he might already have. But in terms of like a 5-point list of why Georgia lost, is that kid getting that 15-yard penalty on your top 5 list?
No.
Okay.
No. I mean, they still were at the 25-yard line after that. So the people that don't know that didn't see it, Georgia hit like a 60-yard pass maybe. Clearly, by far their biggest play of the game. And as the side judge is running down the sideline, we've all seen it. They're trying to look like Carl Lewis running down the field, trying to keep up with these youngins. He runs into the Georgia kid who's not even dressed out, and he gets flagged for I don't know what do they even call it? Interference. Yeah. I'm almost positive Rick Trickett got called for that during a play. But he got called for, I think it was on remember the game where Chris Thompson had like 2 80-yard touchdown runs? Maybe it was in 2012. No, not back-to-back. It was I think it was against Wake in 2012. He had 2 back-to-back 80-yard runs. He had like 200 yards at the half, didn't carry the ball again. But on one of them, the official ran into Trickett on the sideline, and Trickett got called for a 15-yard penalty. Now it was assessed on the kickoff.
Which game was this again? I'm going to try to go through Noel fan real quick, see if I can find it.
I think it was definitely 2012. I think it was 2012 Wake Forest.
Okay.
At home. I think that was the one where
52-0, just an absolute.
Maybe, yeah. Is that the score? Yeah.
That was.
But I think Chris Thompson had 2 long touchdown runs.
Okay. Let me see if I can confirm. He had 197. He had 201 yards.
There you go.
197 net.
Yeah. So 2 of them were very long touchdown runs. And on one of them, I'm almost positive a referee ran into Trickett. And he got called for whatever that was, interference. But it didn't take the score away. It just took Aguayo had to, or no, that would have been Hopkins, had to kick off from the 20 or whatever. You don't see it happen a lot. It was the right call. I mean, get out of the way. You're not supposed to be there.
So it was 21-0. Chris Thompson rushes right for 80 yards. Florida State touchdown. Kick attempt afterwards was good. Unsportsmanlike conduct, 15-yard penalty. Penalty was a sideline warning.
There we go.
Conduct on the touchdown.
Well, man. Yeah. Sometimes I still remember some stuff, Aslan.
Incredible.
Some stuff's just still up in here. But I remember thinking at the time, like, that seems excessive. Like, I think that should be a warning. I also think Trickett got trucked. Like, he got knocked over. Yeah. He wasn't a big dude anyway, and this referee was running full speed, trying to keep up with Chris Thompson. You're going to be surprised he couldn't. He was 10 yards behind, but he was trying his best, and he runs full speed into Rick Trickett. But, yeah, so I saw that on Twitter. I wasn't watching the post-game coverage. but I saw on Twitter where ESPN almost made that like the first thing they talked about. And literally all these different people, whether it was a former Florida State player, I think Jordan Travis might have chimed in, A.J. Westbrook, who I still follow somehow, chimed in, and then other like entities like national sports writers chimed in. Like, come on, give this kid a break.
Yeah.
Like, don't keep showing it. Don't keep showing his number. Don't keep outing him, and don't say that was one of the biggest. That was a game-changing play. Give me a break. Yeah. The game-changing play was the Georgia running back fumbling at the 15, and then the Georgia quarterback fumbling at his own 10 with like 30 seconds to go before the half. Yep. Don't act like that guy. They still scored on that drive, I think. I still think they kicked a field goal, and it's not like Georgia's offense was proving to be like that. That slowed down a juggernaut. Yeah. So yes, no, that was ridiculous. But I just and unfair. And it's just, again, it's okay to say an SEC team just got beat. It just got beat. It's okay. It is okay. So anyway, I was thinking about that game though, because look, I was heartbroken for the Florida State team last year, and for this team too, folks. That was a heartbreaking endeavor to watch. But last year's team, the 2023 team, and I obviously thought that they belonged in the college football playoff. I think they would have played well in the college football playoff. I don't think they were going to win the national championship with Tate Rodemaker as their quarterback. I just don't. I don't think they were going to beat Michigan and Washington back-to-back. Or maybe they played Washington in the first game because they should have. They should have been the 3 seed, but whatever. If they would have had to play Michigan, I think they probably lose that game. But I would have liked to seen it. And I think it could have played out a lot like the Georgia-Notre Dame game. Like, that's a tough matchup for a backup quarterback that's played 20 snaps in his career. That's tough against a really good defense. And you don't have a great offensive line, I guess.
What's going on? Yeah, either that or Notre Dame's blitzes were.
No, they're very well coached, and they're very talented on defense. They were even missing one of their best defensive players. So, but like, was anybody watching that game on Thursday, Aslan, and going, God, this is just, what are we doing? This is a waste of our time.
Outclass? Yeah, no.
They're just outclassed. This is a waste of our time. What is Georgia even doing out there? This is dumb. Why are they playing this game with a backup quarterback? No. It was an entertaining-ish game. Georgia, I know I said it wasn't all that competitive. It was competitive. They were down 2 scores in the fourth quarter. And they were close to making it a 1-score game. They got down to I just think that's probably how the Florida State-Michigan game would have gone last year. I think the Florida State defense would have done what the Georgia defense did to Notre Dame. I think the Florida State defense would have done that to Michigan. Florida State was going to have a hard time moving the ball. The one thing they did have that Georgia didn't was elite receivers or elite receiver, and Johnny Wilson was a matchup nightmare. And that gives them a fighting chance, even with a backup quarterback, something Georgia didn't have. Their receivers just continually let them down all game. So, but it just dawned on me watching that. Like, this is probably how the Rose Bowl might have played out last year. And would we have all whined about it and be like, what, this was pointless? No, it was a competitive college football game with 2 great defenses. And it's like that wasn't even brought up. It's like Georgia had no chance because their starting quarterback wasn't playing. So I don't know. It just occurred to me that like that 20, just like this Georgia team earned its right to play in that game, even with a backup quarterback. I think Florida State last year earned the right to play. And as we watch that Georgia team, it's like, yeah, man, their offense probably isn't good enough, but that defense is ferocious. It is a good defense. It played really hard. It kept them in the game. That's exactly what Florida State would have done. And maybe Florida State doesn't give up a kick return for a touchdown. And maybe they don't have some dum-dum standing on the sideline. Just kidding, kid. Keep your head up, buddy. But, they would have had a chance, just like Georgia had a chance on Thursday, even with a backup quarterback. And I'm not convinced Gunnar Stockton is any better than Tate Rodemaker. And I am damn convinced that Keon Coleman is better than anybody on Georgia's wide receiver core
drops
by a lot. Man. So yeah, so that don't you think those were similar type situations?
Yeah, that's pretty darn accurate. Yeah, I mean Florida State's defense was playing at a really high level last year by this point, and the offense would have been able to probably scratch and claw something.
You got Trey Benson.
Drives, yeah,
and you got some special. You got Trey Benson. You've got Keon Coleman. You got Johnny Wilson. You got Jaheim Bell. Those guys would have been healthier. But you weren't going to move up and down the field on that Michigan defense. Of course not. but you might have made a couple of plays. And, you didn't even – and look, Michigan's offense is better than Notre Dame's offense. Like, McCarthy is probably better than Riley – well, not probably. He's a better passer than Riley Leonard. But that Michigan offense wasn't incredible. No. And they weren't going to charge up and down the field against Florida State's defense. By the way, shout out to Jared Verse. Was named to the Pro Bowl as a rookie. Who could have seen that coming? And
Derwin James made it as well again.
Derwin James made it for the fourth time, I think. I think every year he's been fully healthy, he's been a Pro Bowler. He's going to have a chance. I'd like the Chargers to win a Super Bowl and him do some good things in the playoffs, and I think he's got a real chance to be a Hall of Famer.
Yeah. I like Harbaugh and what he's going to be able to do.
Yeah,
I want to get your thoughts.
I believe in that dude, man. That guy is that guy's a really good football coach.
Yeah. Want to get your thoughts on what Michael said on the way out, Corey. Right now, as we talk here, Florida State now 18th in the transfer portal. They've got 11 guys in, 21 out. But again, the 21 are large. I mean, there's a large amount of like walk-ons.
18th. I thought they were like 8th or 7th the last time we talked.
They were, but it's been like a week since we last talked.
Yeah, that's true. Good point.
So they've got 11 guys in. Michael says he thinks that maybe 14 is the cap by the time classes start beginning here. I know we talked about like they might double up, they might go 30, 40, and he's like, yeah, that's not going to happen. So want to kind of get your thoughts on that. And then apparently defensive line, they're kind of, I don't want to mischaracterize anything. I don't want to say slow playing, but like they brought in a guy from Coastal Carolina who's played a lot of football, Diamante Diggs. That seems to be kind of, if they want him and they put the push, they could get him, but they didn't put the full push on him. Chris Murray, a guy 6'4", 255 out of Sam Houston State, graded out at 78.1. Michael's like, that's the guy that I think they're going to really try to put a push for. That kid from Tennessee we talked about last time we spoke, Jason Jenkins, he's not going to be visiting as of right now. So defensive line still seems a little bit uneven, I think, when it comes to recruiting. So I don't know if that's more of a headline or the fact that they're probably going to be in the low teens in terms of the amount of guys they're going to bring in this cycle.
Yeah, that surprises me. I think it should be more than that, just because I think they have more roster spots than that. Because I feel like they're going to be like 10 scholarship players short of 85, if that were the case. But I also think there's that spring cycle. I do think. Like, look, man, I think here's what I think is absolutely a possibility is that after the spring practice, you'll see the window obviously opens, and I think you'll see another at least handful of guys leave. Like some of these receivers, it just doesn't make sense that they would stay. Let me rephrase that. It makes sense now that they would stay, but they'll know where they stand after a month with Malzahn. Okay, I don't think he's going to play me a lot. I don't stand to see. I'm not going to beat out this guy or that guy. So maybe I should start looking elsewhere. Maybe Malzahn, after a month with these guys, is like, yeah, I don't know, man. You could please by all means stick around, but I don't know that you're going to get to play a lot this year. So I think I think you're going to see some dudes leave after the spring, and then maybe it opens back up again. Where okay, let's say they finish this first cycle with 14. I just would think another 5 or 6 would come after the spring, and that gets you to 20. So then you're at 40 new players or 42 new players, whatever that number ends up being. I would still think you need a few more. I don't know. That would surprise me if they only end up with 14. But I want these next 3.
He's saying
I want
14,
at least 2 of them to be defensive linemen.
Yeah, he's saying between now and I guess classes start on the 6th.
Yeah.
So I don't know how long ad drop runs, and I don't know if that's still technically you're allowed to enroll during ad drop. You would think you should be able to still enroll because they're allowing you to add and drop courses at that point. But I don't know how much more runway they have. But he thinks he's like the January cycle, as he's calling it. Michael was saying 12. They'll at least get one more, maybe up to 14. And then he says they'll get a few more pieces probably in the spring window. But that's a few more. He was saying I don't think he was trying to include anything like greater than 5. But okay. When you on the surface it's like that seems extremely low. But when you think about the 11 guys they have, it's for all intents and purposes, it's like a whole new offense. It's a whole new
starting offensive line.
It's a new
starting quarterback.
Yeah.
Yep.
So I guess if you look at it through that, you're like, well, they made the most of the additions they could bring in. But then you go back and you start thinking about defensive line, and it's like, I know they brought Darryl back.
Yeah, that helps a lot. That's kind of a guy that does count. I know he's not a portal guy, but he's a guy I wasn't thinking was going to be back, and he is. So that should count. I don't count him as a portal guy, but he almost is one.
Yeah. But, Michael was saying the kid from Coastal Carolina, his mind is a depth piece. So I wonder, like, who do you consider frontline guys, though, right now? It's like Darryl's one. I guess, like, is KJ Sampson at this point? We think KJ Sampson's probably a frontline guy for you.
Maybe Lyons at defensive tackle. I think, obviously, on the outside, Williams from Nebraska.
Right.
Who's the other guy they got?
James Williams is the only, like, McCray from Western Kentucky.
Right. So you've got and I also, like, I'm going to be one of the fascinating storylines, and we've kind of touched on it a little bit, but not much, is Amari Williams if he moving back to defensive end.
Very good point.
Like, if that guy, I mean, he looked kind of like a special type twitchy athlete to me. Like, if you can make diving catches like that against Clemson for touchdowns, and some of the other things he did. Now, nobody made a ton of great plays for this offense, but he doesn't move like a typical defensive end. If he can get bigger and faster and stronger, which is the whole goal when you keep lifting in a college weight room with a strength staff, man, he might be a guy that could be a real rotation piece on the defensive line that we're not even talking about. Yeah. So if that happens, okay, I'd still like. Man, I don't think I would like one more big-time interior guy to go along with Jackson, because none of these other guys have proven anything. But, yeah, I'm intrigued by Amari Williams and the kid from Nebraska. Those could be really nice pieces. And I think as you were saying, Aslan, or I think you're alluding to anyway, out of the 11 guys they've gotten out of the portal, there's a chance all of them are starting, right?
The only one that might, Biscuit, and then possibly Randy Pittman. But Randy Pittman would.
But he's going to play a ton.
Yeah, but Landon Thomas, like, you feel good about tight end.
Yeah,
I mean, Deuce is probably going to be your number one receiver. That whole new offensive line, Castellanos, McCray's probably one of your ends in this 3-3-5. James Williams is probably one of your backers, or the
linebacker's probably going to play.
Yeah. Oh, Stephon Thompson, yes. Stephon Thompson's definitely part of the.
So you're talking about, so Marquiston doesn't count. By the way, did Marquiston play in that game?
I don't think so. Let me double check.
I thought I saw him in the game, but I could have been wrong in the Texas-Arizona State game. But yeah, so you're talking about at least 10 new starters. I think we think they're all going to start. Last year, when you think about some of the portal guys that came.
8 snaps, by the way.
So he did play.
Yeah, man.
Okay, so this was funny. This did happen then. There was one of the 4th downs that Arizona State didn't pick up. It was a run to Scattaboo, and early. It was in the first half. I wasn't in love with the call. It didn't look like the offensive lineman knew who to block, and that happened a couple times at Arizona State. But anyway, Scattaboo on 4th and 1 gets tackled for a loss. Marquiston goes to pick him up, and Scattaboo's getting up by himself and just literally pushes Douglas off him. Like, don't touch me. And I was like, well, why would he do that to a teammate, man? And then I'm like, oh, that kind of looked like that might have been Biscuit. And then I'm like, okay, Scattaboo's a competitive guy anyway, and probably not the nicest teammate in the world in the middle of a game. But also maybe he's not in love with the guy that's leaving anyway, that's already in the portal, picking him up after he just got tackled and didn't get the first down. Like, he's mad that, like, if you'd have made a block, man, maybe you're not having to pick me up off the ground. So anyway, I thought that was funny to see. But so, yeah, Marquison's not going to start. These other 10 guys are. No, I wasn't saying that because he didn't do well in that play. Right. I'm saying he's not going to start. It's Pittman and Landon Thomas. Yeah. But when you think about the guys they got last year, Lola Haya didn't start, although probably should have. Terrence Ferguson didn't start. Jalen Brown didn't start. Earl Little didn't start. Cam Riley started Sean Murphy didn't start, was hurt but wasn't going to play.
Grady Kelly didn't start.
Yeah. Like, you got guys that were second teamers that didn't.
And you invested money in, yeah.
Yeah, but Earl Little maybe should have been safety the whole time. I don't care. It doesn't matter at this point. But, yeah, now you're talking about – so I don't know how many guys. Marvin was a starter. DJU was a starter for whatever that's worth. Malik Benson were the starters. Maybe there's probably one other guy I'm not thinking of that started that wasn't here. Other than that, most of those guys you got in the portal last year ended up being backups or rotation players. Well, now you've gotten 10 guys already that are starters, we think. Now, they're penciled in. There's competition. We get all that. Brock Glenn, show them what you're made of, my man.
Let's go.
But yeah, that's the difference, I think, is you went and got starters, not rotation players. You didn't go get contributors. You got starters. So, well, hopefully that leads to more wins, and maybe that's why they won't have 25 new guys. They like the guys they got if they're going to be starting for them, and maybe they don't think they need to they don't need to double up. Again, if you just count the scholarships right now, unless I'm way off, I think they've got. I mean, the kids they lost compared to what they brought in. I mean, they're down. They still got 8 to 10 slots to fill, I think, and that's before it goes to 105.
Most teams are at a deficit in terms of what they're bringing in and what they've lost. So according again to On3, they've got 25 transfers out, and I mean they've got guys here that even the most ardent Florida State fans have maybe never heard of. Because they're walk-ons. So
yeah, and so they also had, I think they had, I'm off by a few probably, I think they had 20 or 21 guys walk on senior day, like 20 scholarship guys that walked. Yeah. That did not include DJU, I don't think, but he's gone. It did include Daryl Jackson, who's back. Maybe somebody else was in the portal that came back. I can't remember. But anyway, they had about 20 guys walk on senior day. Let's say some of those were guys that ended up transferring out. Let's say they've had 40 guys leave. They've had 40 guys leave the program. They brought in so far 31. That's why I'm surprised that they would only take a few more. But yeah, I mean, not everybody gets to 85, and they also, I do think they're going to fill those numbers in the spring. But so that, which is cool. They get to see what they need. These coaches will get to see up close. Yeah, that doesn't work, or that guy's awesome. We don't need another one of these. Like maybe Daniel Lyons is really good in the 3-3-5, and Terrence Knight falls in love with him. It's like, nope, we don't need any more. Or maybe he's like, yeah, I gotta give me somebody else. But that does so. I guess I keep saying the same thing over and over again. I apologize, folks. Been a long night. Played trivia. We're leading the whole game.
Let's go.
Up in Atlanta, and then blew it on the last question.
Oh, no.
For you trivia nuts, here's the question. We had a 9-point lead. You have to bid up to 20. Blah blah blah. We ended up finishing third. What monster did Hercules kill and use its blood to dip his arrows in? But for poison. He poisoned his arrows with the blood from what monster that he killed.
Greek mythology, not my thing.
It's certainly not our thing either. We put Medusa because I was like, well, she's got snakes on her head.
Yeah.
That's probably poisonous blood.
Yeah.
It was Hydra.
Oh!
Hydra. So we didn't get that right, and we lost.
Sorry.
So what can you do?
In case you were wondering, because I was, Marvin Jones Jr. Was in Norman yesterday, so
okay,
much
all
more
right.
what he's up to. And then maybe I should add that to the Kenny Dillingham Reclamation Project. Malik McClain caught a touchdown from Cam Scadaboo.
Great play by him too, to come back to the ball like that and catch it in stride. Yeah, man, good for Malik. They called him a Penn State transfer, which technically he is, but obviously we all know he went. That's where Dillingham first used him, fell in love with him. Was in and I think he redshirted this year, right?
Yeah, he did. And then once that Tyson kid got hurt, they could play him in the Big 12 championship game because that doesn't count towards ruining your eligibility. So yeah, he goes and plays quite well in the postseason. So good for him.
Yeah.
All right, that is a wrap for us. As you heard Michael say earlier, he's going to be out there. Well, no, I think Matt Lasser is going to give him a little breather. So Matt Lasser will be out there on the bench, looking at all these recruits.
Ira was out there on Thursday holding it down, doing it all, Mr. MVP.
Incredible what he does. Did Shane Beamer say anything crazy in the post game?
He said that he's never seen a coach come over to all the way across the sideline and basically taunt the opposing coach.
He's probably not wrong.
Yes, but I know who feels bad. And also,
you know why you never seen that before, Shane Beamer? Because you've only been a head coach for a few years, and you're the only person that could elicit that out of somebody.
And
else.
people like your dad.
Yeah.
Your dad weirdly did not have this same kind of smarmy personality that you seem to enjoy. But it was, I love how he had to be held back. Like, I know he's got the age on Bama, and I'm sure he's a feisty dude. And maybe he's a jiu-jitsu expert. But I feel like Bama could handle himself pretty well against Shane Beamer.
Bielema would, yeah. I think Bielema would be able to.
I think he'd pick him up like a sack of potatoes and run into the student section with him. Who wants to meet Shane Beamer? But I know he's a little bit older, so maybe not. But it was just funny how mad he got, and everybody had, hold me back. It's like, all right, Shane, all right, buddy. And then did you see what he did when they scored that touchdown?
No.
So they scored a touchdown after that. They went down the field and scored. South Carolina did.
Yeah.
And as soon as he gets in the end zone, he looks straight at the other sideline and yells, F you.
Oh, nice.
But he did not say F.
Oh.
Just right at Bielema. And then, Bielema was funny. He tweeted about it and talked about it, so blah, blah, blah.
Yeah, because they asked Bielema. I saw that part. Like, they asked Bielema right after the game. Like, Quinn Kessing was like, what was going on there? And he's like, oh, it's a great game. So happy for our program. Like, come on.
Yeah.
If you're going to do all that, you got to at least explain yourself.
Tough loss for the SEC there, though.
It was.
So the Big Ten is kind of spanking the SEC, right?
Looks like it, yeah. Maybe we do want to be in the Big Ten, Corey. I don't know.
If we want to join the best conference in America, we do. Don't want to go and have to play these scrubs that are losing to Michigan with all of its best players. I mean, what's that about? So, yeah, I wonder how Florida State fans – I know we're leaving. We're done. We'll leave it on this note. Like Alabama losing, looking the way they look to finish the season, no confidence at all that DeBoer is the guy. None. It doesn't mean he isn't, but nothing was proven this year that means he's the guy, that he's the next Nick Saban. And they lost their starting quarterback. He's going to the league. So a lot of question marks for Alabama. That's a big game, man. It's so big, you wonder, will game day be in Tallahassee? And also I found out I was blocked by Herb Street.
No, really?
Well, I went to go look at the text, the tweet he had where he got community noted for saying that's a false narrative.
That was a real tweet? That was a real tweet. He said, like, narrative?
Yeah, the guy, he said something like, so, again, I know most of you people aren't on Twitter. He said, which is smart, he said that he said, great game, Michigan. That was a heck of a win, blah, blah, something to be proud of. And some guy, like a Big 12 blogger, tweeted back at him, you wanted Alabama in over them anyway. And he's like, and you wanted Alabama in the playoff, ? And like some stupid GIF, because that's how people communicate now with GIFs. Right. And then Herb Street quote tweeted and said, keep up the false narrative, clown.
Oh, boy.
And then he got community noted for it. And for people that don't know, if somebody tweets something that's obviously false, and so many people respond to it and say, that's not true, that's not true, that's not true, they'll put a community note under the tweet that says readers added context. And it was like, and the readers added context portion was Herb Street's quote about Indiana not belonging over other teams. Other teams should have been there. So that was very funny that Herb Street tweeted that was a false narrative, that he never said that he wanted Alabama in the playoff. It's like, yeah, you're right. You never said that for sure, but that was obviously the implication. But, yeah, Herb Street, man, that
man's changed. His life got, I don't want to say ruined. He's fine. He's got a probably really nice house.
Social media ruined his life.
Yeah.
Honestly. Yeah. I mean, I shouldn't say ruined his life. It ruined his
greatly affected his outlook
his
on
enjoyment.
life. Yeah.
The enjoyment of his career.
Yeah.
Because he is not a happy person on Twitter. He is angry all the time. He calls the Ohio State fans the lunatic fringe. And he's lost his joy for the sport. And he's done it himself because he's a shill for the SEC. Anyway, Happy New Year, everyone.
By the way, week 1, yes, Alabama at Florida State. Also, Texas at Ohio State. That could be possibly a rematch of the national title game, and LSU at Clemson.
Okay, so probably not going to be at Doak for the 2-10 team versus Alabama without Milroe.
I don't know.
Probably not going to be there for the 2 non-playoff teams.
Gus against his longtime nemesis.
Yeah, that's probably not. So, but hey, if Florida State keeps winning, they have to come back.
That's right.
They can't ignore you forever. If you win some games next year, game day might actually show up again.
All right, we're done then. Let's do another show on Monday for everybody. Over under 1.5 more new players that will be Florida State Seminoles by the time we do this again, Corey.
Over.
I love it.
Over.
He's Corey Clark. I'm Aslan Hajavani. Thanks to Michael Langston for hopping on as well. You've been listening to Wake Up Warchant, presented by Vitamin Energy.